Well, all right. I'm here with a fellow Canadian and a longtime childhood friend, Mr. Daymon Krueger. Daymon, thank you so much for joining me today and for willing to engage in this discussion regarding our nation, our home nation, Canada. But before we dive into our discussion, do you just want to tell our audience kind of a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, I am a tradesman. I have a auto body shop here in Moose Jaw that it's a family-run business with my dad and I, and I that's where I've been working ever since, well, essentially elementary school. I am married with two kids to my high school sweetheart, and yeah, just enjoying the early years of being first couple of years of being married, first couple of years of being a dad here. So it's all very new territory for me, but it's created quite the perspective shift for me. And a lot of that's political, a lot of it's not. But yeah, that's I think a portion of the reason why I'm a little prepared to talk about a lot of the things that I think that we will today is just some of the perspective shift that has happened. And yeah, being a part of the workforce like I am, it changes a person a little bit. So yeah, that's pretty much I think what there could be said about where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. So your kind of political mindset kind of shifted when I guess adult stuff started happening with having kids, getting
You
married,
can say that.
all that
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
you
stuff.
can say that. Like when you start to really take on some responsibility. Like if it's not something like my family wasn't really political, I wouldn't say. Like my dad still thinks that politicians are all crooks, which is maybe not entirely false. My mom,
Very true.
she kind of did the thing where she would just vote for the party so that she could so that she could complain about when things aren't going their way. So yeah, which is kind of funny. I think that's still the case for both of them. And I wouldn't say that I'm, well, maybe I am huge into politics now, I don't know, because it seems like everything's political now. But without being raised with like a super political uh, backbone there, like or influence, it's just kind of the things that more so the morals that were taught to me that have kind of led me to the more conservative side of the aisle here, I guess you could say. I've never really considered myself to any political party, but I suppose now I could, or at least the mindset, because I do have my morals about me that I think that things should be a certain way and that certain freedoms should be afforded to us. And that's kind of how this whole political portion of me happened here when a lot of it was really when PC culture started to like come in.
Mhm.
And I kind of felt like people were angry with straight white men.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where it really bothered me, but I didn't really know the arguments for it. I just kind of stayed quiet about everything and about the attacks.
Mm.
Maybe that didn't come at me personally, but just as us in general. And yeah, that's kind of where I started to bleed into conversations online with, not that I was taking part in per se, but online figures like, let's say, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, just like the sort of clickbaity
Legends.
videos that start you out. Yeah, like the thug life of
That's
when
right.
they kind of dunk on someone. It's kind of where it started me out. I was like, ah, yes,
Mhm.
please. And but then I started looking a little bit deeper into some of their long form discussions and debates on other subjects. Um, and that's just kind of where, I mean, for me, conversations aren't really off limits. I could hear a conversation about anything more now. I mean, like when I started off, I would hear some, like I would see a title for a video and I would think, like I just don't even want to hear the argument. Like abortion was one
All
of the
right.
big things. For example, I didn't even want to look at the video because I was like, you know what? No, that's just a gray area. But like, I feel now that
Like you didn't want to look at a pro-life video, was that it?
mainly,
Okay.
I would say that's how you could say it. Like I didn't want to hear people argue about it because I just didn't want to think about it
I
really.
gotcha.
And that's kind of not, I wasn't raised one way or the other. Like it's, maybe it was because I was a boy, but like that wasn't really something that was ever talked about. But and that's just one of those things where with watching some of these online figures and just, myself growing up and maturing and, just talking with other adults, like I feel as though if you're not willing to have a conversation about something, maybe you just know nothing about the subject.
Mm.
And that's clearly how it was for me on many things. So now I'm just really open to just talking about mostly anything. I mean, it's which is awesome to me that I can just take in more information now, because I would kind of silence some information, like I would insulate it, whereas now I am fine to listen to any argument from any perspective, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, at least. It's and that's just kind of like, I guess you could say, the political awakening to it. And I feel like generally that's more the conservative side, where you don't silence someone for asking the question or for making an argument. I mean, if do it the Socratic method, just be able to put forth your ideals and argue for them or against them. And I think that most conversations should be up for that style of discussion. You should be able to debate with people and just have conversations. It doesn't have to be a debate, but that was something that I didn't necessarily feel before. Maybe you shouldn't just. I thought maybe you just shouldn't talk about some things, but now I see that the freedom to talk about these sort of things really does matter, and you really shouldn't be silent about everything. You should be maybe putting some of your ideas out there so that people know that they're not alone, and that they don't feel as though nobody around them also thinks it the way that they think, which has been it's been helpful for me to see. For example, you, and
Mhm.
how apparently we share a lot of the same ideals now. Like, we were always friends before, but just to know that we've grown up and stayed on the same path, relatively speaking, in just the we haven't gone crazy
Yeah, that's right.
in culture. So
You've got
yeah,
the
sorry
common
for a
sense.
little bit of a rant there, but yeah, that's kind of just how I came into, maybe let's call it, the political spectrum, or what has become political, whereas before it just felt more so like common sense to just have discussions and stuff like that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's kind of how it all started, I guess.
That's awesome. Why do you think so? Like, because when I see personally, when I see some posts from some left-leaning kind of conservatives, now I see a little bit of open-mindedness, but I also see a almost like an aggressive, like, we need to not challenge these COVID regulations, or these or the government and the scientists and the doctors. We can't challenge them and all that, and they kind of get upset when other conservative type people who are more free thinkers and open-minded, when they start challenging that, they call them conspiracy theories. Why do you think, like, there's like this closed-mindedness almost in those type of people, I guess?
Um, like, if I had to guess, it almost seems easier to control a larger amount of people when you make certain ideas forbidden to be even be discussed. I mean, it's so much easier for them to say, if you question the fact that vaccine mandates are a good idea. If you question that, you're an anti-vaxxer, or
Yeah.
or just more so like the ad hominem logical fallacy there, where you're a bad person
Mm,
for thinking this. So it's like they club you into this premise that they kind of sneak into the conversation, where you can't possibly argue it because you're a bad person, or you're just wrong or stupid, or you're not following the science, one
right.
word with a T mark on the end. Like, I feel like it's just easier to control more people that way, because if you feel like everyone thinks this way, like which is the way that they're putting it out there, like some of these premiers here in Canada, like if they state it in the way that they do, you feel like you are such a minority of people, just in the logical sense, that nobody shares your opinion. Like, this is common sense, let's just follow the science, because like that's for this topic directly, like where they're talking
Yep.
in absolutes. They're like, with COVID especially, because they just feel like they can just say that and they're not going to get the pushback, because if they get any pushback, the people who push back, they're just going to be called, like, violent anti-vaxxers or anti-science people. Like it's amazing to me for how they just try and stifle conversation in that
For real.
sense.
I hate how they bring morality into this. Like, if you
Yes.
don't get vaccinated, that you are a bad person. You are a horrible person. And it's almost like they're saying you're an evil person because you're killing people who are vaccinated, I guess. which
Yeah.
doesn't which doesn't help their argument to get vaccinated, because if you can die from if you can die from corona after you're vaccinated, then that doesn't encourage me to get the vaccination in the first place.
Right.
But I like Scott Moe. I have a statement here by Scott Moe, and this was the statement he put out a few weeks ago, and you've seen it, I've seen it, when he was implementing vaccine passports. And
Right.
he said the choice to not get vaccinated is not only impacting you, but is impacting those who choose to do the right thing. The right thing. So they're bringing in almost like a sense of morality to get
It's like
vaccinated.
it's a group think. Like,
It's
you
a
know,
group think, exactly.
you have to think this way or you're a bad person. Like
Mhm.
and that's just it. Like it's ad hominem. They attack your character, not your argument. And
Exactly.
the thing is, they don't even grant you the opportunity to have an argument because you're anti-science if you don't just believe the science. Like,
Mhm.
which doesn't make any sense to me because that's not really how science works.
That's not how science
Science,
works at all.
science has always been something that you're supposed to kind of scrutinize and speculate over like that doesn't sound right, or like, maybe not like people like you and me, but I mean there are people in the medical community who are being silenced on like tech platforms and things of that nature. Like, when you silence people who have like dissenting opinions from this narrative,
Mhm.
it kind of scares me to think that, why this narrative and why beat people's character down and make them sound like bad people for not believing this one side of the argument here.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-vax. I mean, like, I think that you should get the vaccine if you want, but I don't see how I'm a bad person if I don't get it, or like if I was to get it. I don't. Here's the thing: if I was to get it just to keep my freedoms intact here, which is going to be the way of it here in Saskatchewan pretty soon. But if if I if I take it just to get these freedoms back, I would still be cheering for all the people who haven't got it. And it doesn't change my opinion on people who haven't got it. Like, I think that it is 100% up to you. And the part that really bothers me about it is when they try and make you seem like a bad person because, like how you said there, one of the things they say is, you shouldn't have to sit next to someone on a transit and be worried about, them being unvaccinated, even if you're double vaccinated, which makes no sense for you to
Yeah.
fear any in that case. But
Mhm.
the other argument they bring into it is, people who aren't eligible for vaccination. you know I, Maybe you can make an argument for like immunocompromised people who can't take a vaccine, but that's another argument. I mean,
That's
like, if
another
you want
argument.
to talk about that, we can talk about that. But they bring children in general into the conversation
Mhm.
as though children are really at any risk of adverse effects from COVID, like statistically speaking. I mean, it's not even really debated in any real sense that children fend worse from the flu than they do from COVID, which is, I mean, so for you to weaponize children as, you don't care about the children if you're not vaccinated because children can't get it, even though they're trying now to get children to be able to get it. Like, I don't see how that's fruitful because children haven't really been proven to be the ones who spread it much. They don't get it, and like if they do get it, they don't get the really bad adverse react. Well, like, I suppose not adverse, but they don't get the really bad side of COVID. Like, they're not being hospitalized, they're not dying, or at least, obviously everything like that is done on a case to case, but like largely and statistically speaking, children are not at any real risk, more than like it's more risk for the flu.
Most people, no matter the age, are not really at a risk for COVID. We have a like even people with underlying symptoms, they still have a very high survival rate. It's still in the 90%. Like it,
Right.
the whole,
Are you
the
saying
whole,
are you saying like comorbidities, like
yes,
people who have, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
because the average number of comorbidities to people who have died, which is like you and me, we don't have to be scientists or doctors to look at these
no,
statistics and make decisions for ourselves on like the average amount of comorbidities that someone who has COVID, that someone who has died from COVID had is four comorbidities. So if you are a young, healthy person, or not, I don't care what your situation is. I don't think that you have to get it, but I'm just saying, if you are not riddled with things that make your immune system really compromised, I think that it is a risk benefit analysis that you have the right to take. I
that's
don't think that they should be able to strip you of your freedoms for not taking something. And why do it for this specifically? I mean, like statistically, it's got over 99% survival rate. Like, could
that's
you imagine if this was something like Ebola that like was global, like if it was in a pandemic where it's got like a 50% mortality rate, like you like 50-50 chance if you're going to die or not. Like I would be insane. I would be locked in my house. I wouldn't leave
that's
because
right.
it's a 50-50 rate. When they first started locking down, the very first thing that I was looking at was, oh, well, what are the chances that you die? Because like
Yeah,
I thought any reasonable person, that would be the first thing that comes to their head. Like, what are the chances I'm going to die from this?
mhm.
And everyone was still freaking out, even though they were saying like, it's looking like it's a decimal of a percent. And I was like, what? Why do we care? I was like, what
That's
is the flu? I was like, isn't it, the flu's got to be around there, isn't it? Like
yeah.
this is
And
worse
it
than the flu.
was, the numbers were the pretty much the exact same at certain
Yeah,
points. The flu was actually higher. The death of the flu was actually higher. It's at the beginning stages.
right. And that's just it. Like the average, like the median age for someone who has died from COVID is in their 80s. You know that the human life expectancy is 79.
Yeah.
Why don't you just write on the death certificate that they're in their 80s? Like I don't mean to sound insensitive, but when you start making public policy relating to how deadly this virus is, but like if you go on the Saskatchewan, I believe it's Sask Health, like I have the graph on my phone. If you look at the chart of like of how of the age groups and how many people have died in what age group,
Mhm.
80 plus is 80%, and then 69 to 79 was pretty much almost the rest of that 20%. So I mean, like when you're that age, it's probably why so many people have comorbidities, because you're getting up there, and
That's
it's
right.
and it's you have to be concerned about everything at that age, not just COVID. And I don't think that it should. I don't think that it should shut down the economy when it's such low numbers.
Mhm. Oh, 100%. And I would like to know from those statistics, how many of those people in their 80s actually died from COVID alone?
That's just it. There's
That's,
dying from COVID and there's dying with COVID,
yes.
which you're not even allowed to ask, it
They're
seems.
they're
But
not making that distinction.
there have been documented cases of people who were dying in the hospital with something, like just something unrelated. And then they contract COVID and die. They count that a COVID death. There was someone in the States who, unfortunately, they tried to kill themselves with a shotgun, and they were in the ICU dying from that, and they contracted COVID, and they considered it a COVID death. Same
Wow.
thing for a motorcycle wreck.
I
The guy died in a motorcycle wreck.
yeah.
He had COVID and then died from the motorcycle wreck, and they called it a COVID death. Like George Floyd had COVID.
Mhm.
Was it a COVID death? Like, is that like would the news media accept that?
Conspiracy, bro. You're a conspiracy theorist.
I must be. I don't know,
I gotta
but
cut this part, David. No, I'm kidding. But no, you're absolutely right. This whole thing is shady. It was shady from the beginning,
yeah,
and I wanna kind of um Yeah, it was shady from the beginning with the statistics and everything, but I want to kind of go back to the vaccine mandates, the passports.
Right.
Would you agree that with politicians implementing these, they're almost like creating a two class or two tier citizenship?
Two-tiered citizenship, absolutely.
Like where, oh, okay, you get vaccinated, you have these rights, you have these privileges. If you're not vaccinated, you don't. How in a free society can you do that? Like give certain people privilege over
Yeah, afford certain
God-given
rights
rights and freedoms when
and not others. You know, the thing about that is Justin Trudeau was asked that, like almost exactly how you worded it, just point blank, like, you know, are you not concerned you're making two-tiered citizens, like, you know, two different classes of citizens?
yeah,
And he said, I'm aware, like, sorry, I'll be paraphrasing here, but he acknowledged that would be the case. Yes, he said, if you're unvaccinated, life will become very difficult for you. He openly admits, and he is fine with the fact that he is creating a two-tiered class system here, which is ludicrous. I
yeah,
cannot believe that he is willing to say that aloud. And why for COVID specifically? Why not any of these things that are in the normal vaccination schedule that people get vaccinated for? Like, I know people who aren't vaccinated for, measles, mumps, rubella, polio. Like, I know people who aren't vaccinated for any of these things, and yet they still have more of a moral high ground than me if they're vaccinated for COVID. Like, I don't understand. Like, again, I think it's all freedom. Like, I don't really care personally if you're vaccinated for all these things or not. But that's where, like, my worldview comes in, where I don't think that I have the right to encroach on your choices when
yeah.
it comes to what you put in your body. Like, it's insane that Justin Trudeau thinks that he does have those rights to
That's right.
choose what in your body and what doesn't.
Well, not just Trudeau, but premiers all across Canada, like these
Oh,
guys.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, and like the federal and the provincial disconnect there, which
Mhm.
is funny because all of our conservative premiers that, in Western Canada, that we elect because, we find that they support our ideals, and they are our voice for our people. Yeah, they've all folded. They've all pulled a complete 180 and totally changed their word that they gave their voters.
Mhm.
And it is absolutely insane that all of them seem to be on the same page now.
Yeah. I mean, the phrase, everyone that is equal before the law, that completely is annihilated when you implement these type of measures.
Totally goes out
But
the window.
yeah,
Yeah.
the whole equality of citizens is gone. The equality of the freedom and rights is gone. Like it's ludicrous, and it's absolutely tyranny. It's absolutely tyranny. That's what it is. There's no other word for it.
Yeah.
It's do what I say or else. And
And the funny thing about that is that one of the most startling things to me has just been, I would have imagined if the government went to grab this kind of power, that they would have incredible backlash, which, there has been minimal of for this. I am stunned for how they have convinced the vast majority of the population that this is right and that they should also demonize people who are unvaccinated.
it's
Like,
because they have the whole media behind them on their
that
side.
that is true. They have a government funded media that absolutely carries their water because Justin Trudeau wants to pay the CBC the most. It just seems to me that it is startling for how they have convinced the population that this is the way. Like, this narrative, and even in Saskatchewan here in Alberta, where they're talking about hospitalization, and like when they come out with a story and they say, like, our hospital's reaching 100% capacity, and we have to do what we can to limit the spread, go get vaccinated and this and that. Like, they have this narrative where you think to yourself, wow, the hospital's almost at 100% capacity. Little do they totally leave it out that the hospital has always almost been at 100% capacity, or
Right.
at least that's how they've always tried to be. That's how they've always done it, because even in Canada, where there's socialized healthcare, like, it's still like they still get paid by the patient, like, sorry, not by the patient directly, but like per patient. Like,
Yeah.
they still need a full hospital to make ends meet.
Mhm.
They always aim to be at around 85% or more capacity. They don't want to be empty. And for them to frame it as though the hospital is filling up with only COVID patients, it's kind of ridiculous. The fact is, when I was 20, I was admitted into the hospital for a week for an issue that I had. They had no beds for me. I
Yeah.
had to go into the children's ward, into the pediatrics ward, and they had to put, isolation stickers on my room, which was weird because this is before that was normal for me.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, whoa, like we're at capacity. They said this happens all the time. Like when I was there, and I was 20, this was way before any of this.
Mhm.
And I just look back at that now. And when they say, we got to shut down, we have to take away your rights to decide what goes into your body or not, because, it's all you people who are filling up the hospital.
Yep.
As the hospital wasn't always full in the first place.
And they make it, you're exactly right. And they also, well, first of all, I want to comment on two things here. First of all, that's not 100% true, because I have a friend who I'm not going to name. It's a family friend who works at the hospital in Moose Jaw. And she said that is absolutely a lie, that it's all unvaccinated people. She said there are plenty of vaccinated people who have contracted COVID who are in the
Right.
hospital. I'm not going to name
Right.
the person for her sake, but yeah, when we hear these numbers rise, when we're like, oh my goodness, there's like this many people that caught COVID and they're in the hospital now. My question is this: how many have died? How many have died out of those numbers? And it's super, super slim, almost to none, almost to like zero. And
Right.
so there's like, people have conflated the whole idea of catching COVID and dying from COVID. We make
Yeah,
such a huge deal where if someone catches COVID, it's like they're going to die or something. When we just finished talking how it's a 99.5% survival rate for most people. And so we just have this sense of fear, and it's just
dishonest narrative, really.
It's really,
It's it's a 95% chance you will not be hospitalized. And really, when you say hospitalized, what most people jump to is the picture of someone being on a ventilator.
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
that in many circumstances, I'm not 100% sure if it's for here. Like, I'm not going to say that I know this for sure, but in a lot of cases, if you are in the hospital and you test positive for COVID, that is a COVID hospitalization. That is how it is recorded. And you don't have to be presenting with really bad symptoms. Like if you are symptomatic, again, I'm not 100% sure on the severity that you have to be here to be admitted for your COVID symptoms if you've tested positive. But as far as I have known it to be, and when we were at the hospital recently, we had something that we had to go to the hospital for. They said everyone who is being admitted to the hospital, no matter what for, they get a COVID test. So if you're being admitted into the hospital for breaking your leg and you have COVID, that is a COVID hospitalization. And that is exactly what will go to the local papers that, we have X amount more cases. And when they say there's a COVID hospitalization, they leave totally out of the context the fact that you can have COVID and be fine with the fact that you have COVID and that you're there for something else entirely.
That's right. That's
So
exactly
dishonest.
right.
It's so dishonest. And then they sow the anger into the public that the unvaccinated are the reason why you can't get in for your much needed back surgery, like your more elective surgeries, even though a lot of them aren't elective. I mean, my grandpa needs back surgery, and he's been going on in a very, very immobilized state for months and months now. But I personally just blame that on the socialized system that we have here in Canada, because you're just on a waiting list. And when people think that it's the unvaccinated who are making this waiting list that you're on, that just pushes it to the back burner because we need the beds for all these COVID patients. Like, but that's one of those things where like they control the narrative, and you can't ask someone, oh, so these people who are admitted, like, what are their symptoms? Like, why are they admitted? They'll be like, that the doctors who decide that, and like, what do you think, you're a doctor? Like, they will attack your character. and that you're not a good person, that you're not a scientist. Like they'll have this call to authority that, you have no right to ask these questions because you're not in a position to question it. I think everything is up for speculation and questioning personally.
100%. The free market of ideas is what makes a civilization great, because the good ideas always kick out the bad ideas for the most part. And I just, I can't stand how these politicians and these doctors, first of all, these public health officials aren't even elected. So they have no right to make policy or make legislation and bylaws. They have no right or authority to do that in the first place. But, they just blatantly lie. And like with Scott Moe, I want to bring Scott Moe in because he's our premier of Saskatchewan. So we have especially the right to criticize him because, he's our authority over us. But, he straight up said, and these are direct quotes from him, like anyone can go and look this up. But he literally said, the fourth wave, which is the Delta variant or whatever of COVID, is increasingly, oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. New cases are in overwhelmingly unvaccinated people. Hospitalizations are overwhelmingly from the unvaccinated. And again, I just wanted to just state how if you are a person, let's say on the internet or whatever, who brings up a conflicting narrative or a question or even facts from, let's say, doctors who aren't bought into all this crap, who are being censored, then you're labeled literally as like a conspiracy theorist, or like what you were saying, they bring in the whole authority thing. Oh, you're not a doctor, therefore you can't speak on it. Like that is just outrageous. You don't need to be in a position of authority or have a title over your head to speak truth or to reveal truth. You don't need that. Anyone can do that.
It is a logical fallacy to
it's a logical fallacy.
Authority. Like that is a logical fallacy to say that, because you do not represent this authoritative source, you can't have an opinion.
Exactly.
It just doesn't hold water. And it's just like what the media is doing. It's just like what the media is doing, where they make it seem like the entire population has the same mindset. They'll bring up the vaccination rates, and what they say that, because so many people are vaccinated, they think this way of you, the unvaccinated.
That's right.
Whereas that's not necessarily true, but they bring it up, and that is another logical fallacy. And that one is argumentum ad populum, and that is the call to the people, or the call to the majority of people, where you say, look at what we all think, which means we're right.
Oh, let's go back. Let's go back to before 1861, I believe, or whenever the Civil War was. I mean, most of the people in the South believed slavery was okay. Therefore, slavery is okay. Like if you're against slavery, I mean, shame on you. You're not doing the right thing. You're you know what I mean? Same with 1930s in Germany. If you don't dislike the Jews, if you don't think Jews are vermin and scum, then shame on you. You're wrong, because most Germans think that. So I hate that. Like that's why democracies, at its definition, never have worked, because it doesn't matter what the majority says. What is right, what is moral, and truth is truth, and that stands forever. You could be the last person on earth and say something that's truthful. Guess what? That truth's not gonna, I guess, not be truthful, because the majority of people think it's a lie. You know what I mean? So right, that's such an illogical fallacy, which I hate. But I wanna touch on one thing with the whole vaccine thing. Like I've been seeing so many memes online of like, oh, I had my vitamins this morning, but they're not gonna kick in because everyone else didn't have their vitamins, or oh, I took my measles shot, but it's not gonna work because everyone else didn't take their measles shot. Oh, I took my flu shot, which, by the way, I know a lot of people here in America, personally, who have never took a flu shot before, ever.
Yeah.
And to me, that was shock, because when we were in elementary, we always took our flu shots, right? Like that was just a thing, but they weren't mandated, but they're highly recommended. But what do you think on that whole I guess the vaccine with like, I'm so skeptical on it. Like I'm not anti-vax, just to be clear. I'm for freedom of choice. But at the same time, if you can still contract virus and spread the virus with the vaccine, to me, it just doesn't show that it's that effective or it doesn't work that well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense to me, and one of the things that I like to think about for really anything in life is a like a cost benefit analysis, like, you know, or a risk benefit analysis. Like, you have to decide what's right for you, and when you look at the statistics of this, it just doesn't strike me as something where there's any reason for me to get it, especially like when we take into consideration that this was done on an emergency approval plan where
Yep.
they don't have approval from certain agencies, like let's say the FDA and things like that, which, you know, maybe in certain situations of a pandemic it wouldn't be necessary. Like I said, if this was Ebola and this is a 50-50 death rate, like sorry, 50-50 morbidity rate,
Yep.
I chance it. Yep, I'd take a
Yeah, I
vaccine.
chance it.
But when it comes to something like this, where it's a new style of vaccine, it's new, which again, I mean, science does develop and it changes, and I mean, they do have to come out with new vaccines and stuff like that. But that's where I would generally just choose not to be the guinea pig unless I am at great risk for negative consequences from it. And, you know, and again, it's one of those character attacks where it's like, well, you know, it's more about being selfless and protecting everyone else. But again, if everyone else is vaccinated, why do they care?
Exactly.
Unless maybe they can't get the vaccine. But that's not even the argument. And again, to what extent do we have autonomy over what we put in our body? I mean, like, why does everyone's problem have to become mine?
Exactly.
Exactly. You know, like I'm not there's an argument that is the best argument is for the immunocompromised, I would say, from their point of view. But they don't even try that one.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. They drive to that it's the children who, again, are like statistically way down. Like they don't have really any negative consequences from contracting COVID. They're almost always asymptomatic. It
Yeah.
just, like, for me to sit here and see that they mandate a vaccine for something like this, it just seems totally illogical to me, and wrong and wrong.
Even if this is my personal opinion, even if COVID was a high death rate, I still believe the government has zero right or
Oh,
authority
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
mandate a vaccination into someone, like a vaccine into someone, because I love the quote where it says quarantine is isolating those who are sick. Tyranny is isolating those who are healthy. And that's what we've been seeing. I think I butchered that quote, but that's what we've been
No,
seeing from the
that's,
get-go.
well, I haven't heard it, but that does sound quite accurate to me as well.
That's right. Yeah. But that's what I've seen from the start. Like the government never really suggested, I mean, they might have, but they never pushed or went forward of saying, hey, those who can contract COVID or at a higher risk of getting COVID and even dying from COVID, maybe you should like chill and stay home and not go out. But those who are healthy or whatever, just continue living your lives. We just suggest to maybe social distance, maybe wear a mask if you want to or not. Like there was no suggestions or anything like that. It was all, oh, our population of citizens are dumb. They're like children. We need to tell them what to do. We need to hold their hand. We need to force all this stuff and regulations. And it's like, actually, we are very intelligent. We're very smart. Most people are educated. We know what to do. Like even when you're sick with the flu or whatever, to keep your distance, until it leaves your body, that, you don't go around and hang out with people. It's just common sense.
Yeah, and again with that, like where you say you kind of take the people who are, let's say, immunocompromised or at risk for something like this. I've never meant to sound insensitive saying it, but I mean it's always been a you problem for
Mhm.
something, for even the flu season, for colds. I mean, if you are genuinely this high of a risk for adverse reactions, it's always been a you problem. And I mean, maybe the people in your close circle should be extra careful if they want to be involved
100%.
with you on a daily basis. But you know what? For you to say that everyone in society has to put their life on hold or give up their freedoms
Yeah.
and and accept how they will lock down the economy, and I couldn't believe it that they made it illegal for you to visit your family at Christmas. Like,
For real.
And again, the best argument would be for those who are immunocompromised and can't be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Like, it just strikes me as it's not up to them to decide. It's not up to them to decide all these things, like what you can put in your body, and your freedoms, how they think that they can just take them away so easily. Like, it I never would have thought in my life that it would have been illegal to go visit friends and family whenever you see fit.
Yeah. And
And
that's
how did they make that there was like a social contract where everyone was willing to rat each other out for that?
yeah,
It's insane.
that is insane. But I remember, like, I think it was last Christmas, or maybe, yeah, it was last Christmas. Yeah, because I'm thinking way beyond. But last Christmas, my mom was telling me that, they implemented like a 10-person, I think, was it 10 people in Saskatchewan, and indoor in your own home or whatever, you're only allowed up to 10 people or something like that. It was
It
during Christmas.
ended up getting to the point where it was immediate household only.
Okay, yeah, but I think at a time or a certain sliver, there's like 10 people or whatever, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep, and that's what they're going back to. They're going back to that now
that's
on
okay,
October
yeah.
1st.
But I remember at Christmas time, my mom was telling me how, like, well, the grocery stores and the malls, it's funny how it's packed before Christmas, everyone's shopping and getting all their stuff, but yet when they go back to their own homes, they're limited on people because, all of a sudden, if you have too many people in your own home, I mean, COVID, and it's like,
Right.
there's such a double standard. Like, it's just,
Yeah, and forgive me with not exactly recalling which tyrannical orders were in effect when, but I believe at Christmas I believe it was household only, unless you were from a single household, then you could visit with another house. Like, these arbitrary rules, like this ridiculous rules that, I'm going to be frank, I don't think that many people followed, or I
yeah.
hope that they didn't. Um,
Oh, my family didn't, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I certainly didn't. So it just strikes me as crazy that you can go to Walmart and meet with people there, and that's legal.
Yeah.
But yet you can't have them come to your house. You can't have them come onto your private property. It's like they think that, yeah, like we're children, like we have no accountability, like we have no way to possibly think for ourselves,
Yeah.
and where we can't willingly engage in riskful activities that we have thought through. Like, if I want to go if I want to go to your house and there's a pandemic going on, I think that is up to me to
That's
decide
right.
if I want to take the risk
Mhm.
of putting myself or these people that, obviously this would be some sort of a contract where, if it's during a pandemic, like, I'm not going to just barge into your house. Like, you would
That's right.
invite me. Like, it's just like any other time.
Yeah.
But I believe that you should have the freedom to be able to decide for yourself what riskful activities you take part in. It's like for them to say you can't go skydiving anymore because of the chance of you dying,
Yeah.
whereas never before has that been an issue,
Well,
where they say you can't do risky things.
what about driving itself? It's like, I mean, there's such a high chance, or, oh wait, hold on. I'm thinking of a study that was done. This was I think in last September. There's a study that was done by this university. The name of the university is, I'm forgetting it, but they're saying how, like, the likelihood of a certain age bracket of dying from COVID is like the same as you actually have a higher chance of dying in a car accident. And I was
Right.
like, I was kind of
Yeah, I
shocked.
heard that one.
Did you
Yeah,
hear about that study?
I heard about it, but
It was a liberal university too that did it. So that's why I'm
yes,
like,
it
okay,
was.
this
And
must be
that
true
was
in that
probably
sense.
not the result that they were looking for.
Yeah, it was not the results they were looking for.
Yeah.
But but my point was with that, it's like, if that's true, I mean, that's like me saying, okay, world, everyone in my area, you guys can't drive today because I'm driving, and I need to go out somewhere, and I don't want the possibility or the chance of me getting in an accident with you guys. So therefore, you guys all have to stay home until I'm done driving, and then I'll come back home. And then, someone else can, that's the kind of logic where I go with all this, because it's so ridiculous. and
Yeah, there
outrage.
there have always been external threats to most of your actions. Like
Exactly.
when you hop in a car, you endanger everyone around you with your driving. And it just strikes me as I don't see this as being any different in the sense that
Yeah,
if you are voluntarily getting in a car and
that's right.
driving, and everyone around you is voluntarily getting in their cars and driving, if some people get in an accident, they get in an
Get
accident.
in an
And I
accident.
mean, and accidents happen. And I mean, like in the case of COVID, it seems like rare statistic, just similar to a car crash, except probably like you say, and like that study said, yeah, I can't remember the study either, but I mean,
I remember.
it's more likely to be that you die in a car crash
Mhm.
in a certain age bracket than you would from COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you say to people? Because I hear this argument a lot, and I kind of have an answer. I think it's comparing apples to oranges, but I hear this argument a lot, especially from conservative type people that I was shocked about. I'm speaking from personal experience and people I know, but I'm not going to name their names, obviously. But they
Right.
make this argument that oh, people, when you go into a car, you put your seatbelt on, you follow the speed limit. You stop you at red lights and at stop signs. You have no problem doing that, but for some reason you have a problem getting a vaccine that will help your fellow humans out as well. What's the difference? Like, what do you say to that type of argument?
Well, I mean, the argument that would say that, really, I mean, but the externalities for something like me putting on my seatbelt, I mean, it affects me. It doesn't really affect you.
Yeah.
So for them, it seems like a straw man. Like I don't know. Like it just seems like you're putting up an argument that is totally unrelated. Like these things are completely disconnected from each other. To
Mhm.
say that for me to make the decision to put my seatbelt on versus for me to decide to take a vaccine, which is also supposed to be designed for my protection, not yours. I mean, if
Yeah.
I chose to not wear a seatbelt, though, yes, let's say that laws are put in place for that for my own protection, but I can make that I should be able to make that choice about if I want to have something like a vaccine, which again, like if I put on my seatbelt, I'm not going to get myocarditis, which with the vaccine, I'm not so sure.
Mhm.
So like, and again, like young men are at, I believe there was a study done on this, and it was like 6 times higher rate to get myocarditis,
Wow. That's
which
crazy.
is I won't pretend that I know exactly which one that was. I believe that was fluid around the heart. It's something. It is something to do with your heart, but I mean, like either way,
It's a
it
serious
just
side
strikes
effect.
me. It's a serious side effect. I mean, like yeah, they say that they can usually treat it with medication, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the the risk benefit to society as a whole and to me, they're unrelated when you talk about me getting in my car and the
Yeah.
externality related to me having a vaccine.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in my opinion, like it's comparing apples to oranges, and putting your seatbelt on. First of all, that's like it's external, like what you're saying. A vaccine is internal, and vaccines are meant to help more so you than your community. While driving the speed limit and all that stuff. First of all, it's on public paid roads that you yourself pay for, and without following the rules and stuff there, like it's anarchy. It would be anarchy. But me not taking a back, like how would that be anarchy for like it just doesn't make sense. it,
Like,
it is a
like
straw man argument, like what you said.
if I could go out, like if I could go out with a vaccine in my system and then unclick it and pull it off me like a seatbelt and just
Yeah.
take and shut up, like suck it back out of my arm, okay, then you have a good argument where it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
when
yeah.
I'm in public, I have a vaccine, but then when I'm back at home, I can take the vaccine out. I mean, it's completely unrelated. It's
Yeah.
100% unrelated, especially when the externalities of wearing your seatbelt are nothing like the externalities of of getting of of getting this vaccine, which again, nobody can even really argue that there's long-term studies for. And I still stand. I mean, if this was something much more serious with a much more severe death rate, I would probably be a lot more on board. But when they start to mandate things and give these bizarre incentives like lotteries
Yeah.
and gift cards, it's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah. For
And
real.
it just makes me so skeptical. Again, I'm skeptical about everything now because when they flip flop so much, and it's such a cute argument too, when they're like, don't question the science, but yet the science is going to change all the time. Like, I understand science changes. Like, I understand that sometimes you could think one thing and then another. But what the hell do you mean don't question it? Why would I not question it?